Agents podcast.
Lab Coat Nation, welcome back to another episode of the Lab Coat Agent podcast. And I have to say, today's episode is going to be the first ever with a potentially concussed guest. I'll let him tell the story about why he potentially has a concussion. So if he says anything really goofy or off the wall, I'm giving him an out right now. Ladies and gentlemen, we are bringing on the host of the Business Freedom Podcast. He's the founder of the Real Estate B School, which helps you leverage your business. Let's be honest, most of you many days say, I hate my job, I hate my career, I have no time, I'm running like crazy. Well, this guest is going to help you achieve greater results through our conversation today. He's also a best-selling author. He started his real estate career in 2007 when he left his corporate job, but we're going to let him tell us more about that. Welcome to the show, Mr. Lars Hedenborg, my friend. Welcome. Good to meet you, man.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Yeah. So the quick story, the 10-second version is that I binge watched Cobra Kai. Karate Kid is one of my favorite movies ever. And then I get this idea that I need to take jujitsu lessons. And so my first class 10 days ago, I don't even think it was an aggressive move, but I got tossed and I just felt it in my head. Like that did not feel good. And so I've had a headache for 10 days. I went to my primary doc this morning. He's like, you need to get a CAT scan today. So yeah, if I say something stupid or I start to get wobbly and just like disappear from the screen, call 911. Somewhere in the North Carolina region, someone just passed out from a brain injury.
I love it. Well, I can tell you already right off the bat, we're going to get along because I am also a Karate Kid fan. So for any of you out there who grew up in the same era, as I imagine Lars and I are probably a similar age, you're Top Gunners, you're Karate Kidders. Like this is getting off to a good start, Lars. So let's start though. Assume our audience has no idea who you are. It's the first time they've heard of you. Tell us who you are. Like, how'd you get into the business back in 2007 and what led you to where you are today?
Yeah. So my journey was, everyone has their own journey into the business. I came in, I actually relocated a corporate relo from New Jersey to Charlotte back in 2002. But before I had moved, I bought a few properties up in New Jersey, 2 family homes. So I kind of got into it a little bit there. I moved down to Charlotte. Started out as an investor. I bought 8 or 9 properties, got to know my broker. He really good sales guy, sold me into leaving my corporate job and becoming one of his agents. And my first 9 months in the business, I sold 27 homes and none of the leads were from the broker. And I noticed that he was working 8 days a week. And so he had like 40 agents in his brokerage. He was hustling to make a buck. And I was really just looking back on that. It was just a good lesson on, man, he's got all this exposure, 3 offices, in different parts of town, and he's still having to work as hard as he is. Kind of watching my broker just kind of hustle and grind and do all of that. And at the end of the day, I think I brought in $250K of GCI, all of my own leads, and I grossed from him $175. So I paid this guy $75,000. He didn't generate business for me or so the value equation, like I was just kind of scratching my head. I was just happy to be busy. 27 homes in 10 months from my own sort of lead gen was good, instantly 7 days a week. And so I got married in 2006. We had our first child end of 2007. I left this cozy corporate job to get into real estate. I went from, really great job, but just the whole corporate grind and ladder. And I just wasn't willing to play that game. And so I knew that leverage had to be part of my equation. So I hired an assistant in 2008, did 44 sides. Late 2009, I brought in my first buyer agent. We went from 58 to 118, a couple more buyer agents to 178 to 248. 2012, I sold my last home that I've ever sold. And then ever since I've been, a squirrel just ran by. That's going to be a lesson later in the podcast. There's this squirrel that runs by. So let's mark that. Do not cut that out. That's off script, but do not cut that out. So 2012, January was my last sale. It was my highest price point, and the guy was listed 7 other agents over 7 years. So my last 1.2 million was my last sale. And I just committed to to building a business that ran without me. So,
So let me stop you real quick. First of all, I love that you said that your broker worked 8 days a week. It actually took me about 5 seconds to think. Wait. There's 7 days in a week, which is funny. I like that. But what I wanted to ask you was, you mentioned that in the first year you were calculating what your broker was making off of you. How long did you stay for that broker? And I want to ask my audience, like, ask yourselves, and this is not a pitch to go to any particular brokerage, right? But ask yourself, what is your broker doing for you? I think that's a really important question to ask. But if you could answer that question, like, how long did you stay with that guy?
yeah, so my first 10 months in the business was it. I was over at Remax before the end of that 10 months. So at Remax at the time, they were kind of hands off, kind of let me do my own thing until they didn't. Until 3 years later, they said, you can't grow your team anymore. We're not making any more money on you. And so within 2 weeks, I bought my own Remax franchise, but I never saw much until recently. I never saw much value in a brokerage. And so then I went independent, then KW, and now I'm with EXP. So the journey in terms of brokerages, I've always just questioned, like, what's the true value of the money I'm exchanging? It could be a lot, it could be a little, but then also
Can we talk about that though for a second? And by the way, folks, I just want to let you guys all know that as our audience, I go into almost all of these podcasts without a preconceived plan or conversation. And I know what these people bring to us, but Lars is a great example. Just met him for the first time, literally, 15 minutes ago, right? And now here we are. But if you don't mind, Lars, I'd like to ask you about this because you have this experience. Clearly, this is a passion of yours. And I think this is a really important topic for real estate agents because I'm not in real estate, by the way. I'm in mortgage. So I'm on the sidelines, but I'm heavily involved in real estate. So I watch this stuff. I study this stuff because I want to bring value to realtors to grow my business, right? Same concept. I want to be like their broker. What frustrates the piss out of me is that I watch a lot of these real estate agents work for so many different brokerages that bring no value, or they bring the same, like, antiquated dinosaur stone age value and nothing really of value to their agents. And so I think we're probably going to lead into this, but I really wanted to touch on that with you because it's interesting. Remax, KW, EXP, and I'll even give my opinion on EXP. My issue with EXP as an overall model is that, and I'm bringing this up because I just know it's going to be a controversial topic, is that it's getting better, but it started as it's all about, creating future wealth, right? But you have to actually be able to attract, and you have to actually sell real estate or this doesn't work, right? So kind of both those topics. I don't know if you have an opinion on them, but one, brokers not bringing value. Two, I guess I don't want to pick on EXP because I actually love the model, but just the concept of realtors. Find yourself a team or a brokerage that brings value. And I think Lars is going to help us understand that, right?
Yeah. And no matter like where you are in your journey, yeah, I've always just thought of where I spend my time is really valuable. So when I got into real estate, that first 10 months, even though I grossed 175 from my broker, I made $18 an hour. So I spent a whole lot of money on stuff that didn't work. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I was just sort of doing the thing that anything that was marketed to me, I was spending money on. But to answer your question directly, it's what I'm passionate about. So I went the whole way. It took me 6 years to go all 6 stages. We kind of have 6 stages of growth in real estate. So it took me 6 years to go from agent, from agent to ramp to build to lead to exit production to own, and a lot of failure in all of that. And so I never really planned on real estate B school. But since 2013, the passion has been to help agents make more money, have more freedom, and to have more impact. Everyone's looking for the money, and by chasing the money, they have no freedom and they have little impact in their family and their community or any of that. And so, real estate B school is still committed to, we're not going to solve, the brokerage is never going to solve the, getting somebody to do like the 5 things that make you money in real estate. And I don't think brokerages are going to solve the value to consumer. So I think that's on the agent or the team. The reason I went with a business is that I can hire professionals for each position to provide an experience based on that phase of the buy or sell. And so I just wouldn't want to compete with a team that's built the right way in your market. Like, it's hard to be all 10 things to a client, like the marketing person, the data entry person. I'm going to take the pictures. I'm going to do inside sales, outside sales. Like, it's really, really hard. As far as the value of a broker goes, I think they all sort of, it kind of depends on where you are in your journey. And if you're getting any closer to your financial goals, there are a lot of top agents that, take EXP, for example, and I was I don't know if this reference is going to make sense, but for some it will. I am the Saul to Paul conversion on EXP, where it wasn't on my radar. And I likened it to Mona V selling acai berry juice, literally. And I was just closed off to it. I'm generally brokerage agnostic. So I think if you sell 30 homes a year, you could go from KW to Remax to EXP, right? Whether or not you get, KW kind of, they take a lot of money, and the value exchange isn't that great. But generally speaking, if you sell a lot of real estate, you're not going to get a whole lot for it except your commissions. EXP has stock, right? So whether you value that or not, you can earn $16,000 worth of stock. EXP, whether we like it or not, is disrupting the brokerage industry, not the agent to consumer. I don't think there's anyone that has figured that out. I mean, Redfin has taken a run at it. Zillow is making a run at it by trying to control the entire transaction. But that's never a game that I'm going to win. So I don't know if that answers your question directly, but it comes down to the person. Like, hey, if you're not going to do the things it takes to be successful in mortgages, right? There's a plan as a new mortgage broker that you could follow. In 5 years, you'll be a top mortgage broker. And the first 2 years are going to suck. But I bet you the dropout rates in mortgage from a newly licensed mortgage person to the first 2 years are probably similar to real estate.
Yeah. Well,
it's like 80%.
Every industry is that way.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think any brokerage or coaching company is going to replace somebody just not willing to do the work.
Well, and I think that's what's important to point out is, and that's why I bring it up, because I am agnostic. Everybody knows it. I'm not in real estate, so I don't care. I love everyone. In fact, I have a shirt that says Real Estate Chameleon because I blend with everyone, right? And the reason I brought that up is because it doesn't matter what name is on your shirt. At the end of the day, who's bringing you the value? And you even said it too. It's like you're chasing the money. I think most agents make the mistake of chasing a split or chasing a cap or chasing those sort of things. But what does that matter if they're not helping you close deals? Right? Like, so many, and this applies to real estate and mortgage as well. They can't see the forest through the trees. They look at the dollars, they look at the percentages, but they can actually make more with less if they have the right structure and the right leadership and the right team, right? The right brokerage who's giving you the value. And I just wanted to drive that home because you opened that door, and it's a passion of mine. So I love talking about it.
Yeah. And it's a good point. I mean, so an agent on a well-run team, like, man, if you're less than 2 years in the business and you're struggling to make money, NAR, our association, the stat for a 2-year-old agent is $9,300 a year gross. $9,300 a year. So the reason people
poverty.
Yeah, I mean, they're not making it. An average agent is, 49. A 16-year veteran is 72.
Wow.
Gross. So, like, there's no wealth in the industry overall. So the question is, like, what kind of systems and processes and leverage can you get on the organizing your time, using the right tools, but then also, is there a model that you can plug into that can help you have additional streams of income or different ways to, and that was the big conversion, not to make this an EXP pitch, because I didn't even plan to mention it. But that's the biggest, there's just additional avenues in EXP that aren't in other companies, whether you like them or not, they're just not there. Right. So, but I've got lots more to talk about, about straight up.
And I do want to do that. And I will say to anybody, like, if, again, this is not a pitch for any brokerage because, again, I'm agnostic. I think KW has some amazing things. I know a bunch of Remaxers that absolutely crush it. I know people at Coldwell Banker and Berkshire, you name it, right? It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the point I think was find that value. But let's get into what you talked about, which is the leverage piece of it, which is chasing the money, which is working 8 days a week, which is those sorts of things. Like, let's go down that path because I think that's important. I think there's a lot of people listening right now that's saying guilty.
Yeah. And this one is probably the one that, I mean, I made every mistake you can make in business and business building and multiple times. The one thing I did right from the beginning was realize that I wanted to make $250 an hour. That was my first sort of aspirational dollar per hour number that I came up with in 2008.
Why that number?
I wanted to make $500,000 and I wanted to work 2,000 hours.
Wow. What's
So
that breakdown? What's that breakdown to a week?
40 hours a week. So I wanted to work 50 weeks, 40 hours a week. And I wanted to make 500,000. I left a job that was almost, it was with options. It was about a couple $100,000. So I was working 2,000 hours, making 200,000. I came from 100. I wanted to make 250. My first year, I went to 18. So I netted 36 grand that first 10 months. So it was just an interesting dip there. And it took me about 5 years to get to 250, another 5 years to get to 500. And I'm in the 5-year block where I'm getting pretty close to 1,000. And so here's the secret. If you want to make more money per hour than you're making now, stop doing the things that don't make you that dollar amount. So when I declared to nobody, but I just declared and I wrote it on all these index cards, $250 an hour. Do you know how quickly I got annoyed with everything I was doing? I was showing homes. I'm like, there's no way that I can't hire someone who wants to do this for 20 bucks an hour. Anything with paper or clicking a keyboard. I'm like, there's no way I can't hire an administrator that can do this. Right. And so look at every job of a real estate agent. Like just, even if you're at the grinding it out 7 days a week, just take yourself out of that for a second and just trust what I'm going to say. There's no position that a real estate agent does that I wasn't able to hire someone for $75 or less per hour. So let's say you're willing to work 3,000 hours a year, which is 60-hour work weeks. 3,000 times 75 is what? Like 225. So we have some agents on our team that are making, 200 to 250. It's on the right splits. So they're making what they want because we're not giving away 50%. We're giving away about 20% on average. All the systems are so dialed in that even agents coming into our team can make 6 figures plus, which very few agents do in our industry. So, an example is like, take your typical day of a real estate agent. And let's say you're a busy real estate agent. I've got a closing today. So I had to swing by and get the lockbox and the sign. And then I had to get the due diligence check over here. And then this sign fell down. I had to drop off marketing brochures. Most agents are doing 2 to 3 hours of the lowest position on a team, being a runner. There's nothing, it's not that that's not important, right? The person that sweeps, the stadium, at a stadium is important because it's got to be clean, but they're not making as much money as the guy that's in the skybox, that owns it. Mm-hmm. And so it's just that mindset of thinking about like, is this the best use of my time? Am I the only person that can do this? And then just getting to a level of frustration where you're willing to do something about it, whether it's technology leverage or, people leverage. There are lots of smart folks right now who are not working that could work 20 hours a week for, where all you're risking 20 hours a week times 50 weeks is what, 1,000 hours. So if at 20 bucks an hour, you'd be risking 20 grand and you'd have to know how to put that 20 hours back. Like if you could replace that with $100 an hour activities, you're going to make $80 every hour you pay someone to do $20 an hour.
Yeah.
And 90% of what a real estate agent does. It just takes an evolution of the systems. And, we have a 3-year vision, a 1-year plan, a 90-day world, and weekly and daily. Like we have a whole process that we bring a vision into what you're working on today. It's actually, I use the same process as the Business Freedom Planner. So just that whole process will allow you just to be honest with yourself and where you're spending your time.
Mm-hmm.
When you start the day, are you doing anything sales related for the first 3 hours of your day? It is nearly impossible to be a top agent and to have a chance at making the kind of money you want to make if you're not like super diligent about just conversations daily about real estate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's ever going to go away. Maybe texting or bomb, or there's ways you can leverage it but it's not going to go away.
Yeah.
And so I could talk about that stuff forever, because that's how I went the whole way, the whole 6 years to my last closing. And then 2 years later, we did over 400 deals, and I worked 42 days that year. I made $2,300 an hour from that business. And I started out at 18. So, and it's not all that complicated. And it's the same in every industry. You probably read the book E-Myth, Michael Gerber.
I know of it. I've only read bits and pieces of it.
Yeah. So it's the first book I read when I got into real estate. This was back in 2007, where essentially the E-Myth it's the entrepreneurial myth. It's a myth because most entrepreneurs are doing all the technical work in the business. And so we each have a technician in us, a manager in us, and an entrepreneur. So there's 3 people that live inside someone that's willing to go out and make their own way in the world. So by doing that, we're entrepreneurs. The thing that trips us up is the fact that we're going to do the technical work and we're never going to build the systems like a manager does. We're never going to hire an administrator, which is what a manager does. And then we're certainly not going to spend time thinking about the future of the business. And so most agents are doing 100% technical work, the technician, and they never get a chance to make any decent money. We find that most agents are making less than $20 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
They're working, 2,500 to 3,000 hours a year, and they're making 50, 60 grand.
Yeah.
And it's sad because it kind of perpetuates where it's the reason why you work a deal Friday at 9:30 when you should be with your family. It's because the client saw you bring the sign out yourself and do manual labor, and they saw you drop the brochures off yourself. And you know what I mean? They see you doing low dollar productive jobs. So you better work the deal at 9:30 on a Friday, or when a deal blows up on a Sunday and you step out of church, to take it's like the attorney, the inspector, the lender, nobody's there on Sunday. Why are you working on a Sunday? So there's no standards in our industry. The industry overall is just lack of standards and professionalism across the board. And real estate agents are handling, like, it is straight up financial surgery. One of the most critical financial moves a family will make is buying or selling a home. Yet we have agents selling 5 homes a year that trip upon, like, oh, you're my friend. You're my friend. So yeah, use me as your agent. Don't ask me if I've sold homes. Right. We actually had a story recently. It was a guy that used to be on my team that went on his own, but I still run with him on Saturdays. He's basically transacted like 1,500 homes, new construction, then about 500 on my team, and about 30 to 40 a year now. And he had one of his clients in his neighborhood, walked over to an open house in the neighborhood, asked just got to know the agent. The agent said he had 400 buyers from New York looking in this neighborhood. The guy comes back to my friend and says, hey, listen, this other agent has buyers ready for the home. The guy I know looks him up on MLS. He's like, with all due respect, that agent hasn't sold a single home in his career. You know what I mean? So there's no like, hey, am I even going to like question what this person is saying? So, and I can appreciate it. I can appreciate as a new agent, trying to hustle. It's something I would say.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would have at least one home sale.
Something to back it up. There's a lot to unpack that you just talked about. And so there's several places we can go. But one of them that I think is interesting that I don't think many realtors actually put any time or attention to is knowing your data. Just from the way you're talking and the way you're quickly calculating things, your dollar per hour, your your net, you know, your gross, you know, all these things. And I'm wondering how many people are listening to this thinking, crap, I've never calculated any of that. I have no idea. I think because my 1099 says that I grossed 150,000, that I made 150,000, which isn't anywhere near the truth. And yet they're also thinking to themselves, I don't have a pot to piss in and I can't, you know, afford anything. That's why. What two questions here. Why is that so important, knowing your data? And two, how do you go about calculating it and figure it out? Where do you start for somebody who's never really thought in that wavelength?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So the most basic calculation I want everyone to do, there's two calculations, and depending on when you listen to this, you could use, it's the most recent tax return. And I know we run some stuff through our taxes, but just use AGI. So adjusted gross income from your tax returns, and calculate that number. So for me, my first year, it was like $37,000. So it was 250 I brought in, went to 175 after I paid my broker, and I spent apparently $140,000. It's before I had a bookkeeper set up, or, you know, I just got all my stuff together and we just ran it through and there was 37,000 left. And then I took 37,000 and I divided it by, in 10 months, I worked, you know, X number of hours. And it was a lot of hours, even though it was only 10 months. I think it was like 2,500 hours. And that's the calculation.
Where are you getting the hours from? It's not like you're clocking it. So I'm assuming that's just an estimation.
Yeah, I still do this calculation. So I just go back and I have my Google Calendar open, where it's only 52 times you need to click the little arrow back and just quickly calculate the number of days that you worked. And so for me now, I typically have Fridays off. And so in a typical week, it'll be 4 days. So I'll just do 4 times 8. So it'll be 32 hours that week. It doesn't have to be an exact calculation, but it does need to happen. And you generally know, like if you ask an agent, how many hours are you working? You know, they generally know, like, oh man, it's like Monday, you know, probably about 10 hours, maybe, so 60 hours a week. Like you can get them to so 60 times 50 is 3,000. And then if you're not making 300 after expenses, you're making less than $100 an hour. A typical agent working 3,000 hours is probably making 150, which is $50 an hour. Mm-hmm. And in real estate, 250 is possible. You know, and so it's the calculation of your actual, which is just going back to your tax returns, making an estimation of your hours, and then the aspirational numbers where it gets exciting. You know, to me, the 500 divided by 2,000, like, you know, you could wrap your head around that being possible. It takes some leverage, it takes some systems, you know, but it's definitely possible. Or at least go from 50 to 100. How would your life change if you went from, you could scale your hours down and still take home more dollars and have a better existence. So that's really big picture. That's going to force you to get a little bit smarter about where you're spending your time. That's going to force you, like on a daily basis, you know, part of our planning process before we enter into a new quarter, we do a time study. It is the single most painful thing you'll ever do. It's looking in 15-minute increments for 14 days straight. Every waking 15 minutes, you're writing down what you've done. Most people won't do it. So most people will check out like, that's way too hard. And then they're just complaining that their life sucks. Right. But if you bring a time study into a 90-day planning process, we have a process we call delegate to elevate. That term was stolen from Traction, Gino Wickman. But we do it a little bit differently. We do it based on actual data. Just be honest with yourself. Where are you spending your time? You know, I mean, and then we just code the different activities, working in the business, on the business, or administrative. And then we do the same thing for your personal time. Is it self-care? Is it family? Or is it administrative, family administrative? Like, are you mowing your own lawn? Are you, you know, doing the dishes? Are you getting joy from those things on the one hand, or are you doing something that you can pay someone $10 an hour to do? And so I have brought this to the point where it bugs the crap out of my wife. Like, she'll ask me to do something and I'm like, I mean, I could do it, but this whole thing implodes if I go do that thing. like I've already decided that this is the year I go for $1,000 an hour, and you're asking me to do something that I can bring a guy in for 50 bucks.
Like take the trash out.
No, I'll do that. I have leveraged that to my son though. My son needs a little bit more responsibility.
There you go.
So I've just gotten fanatical about it, and it's not, I am a numbers guy. So I have an engineering background. I worked on Wall Street in acquisitions. My corporate job was acquisitions, which is a lot of number crunching and valuing businesses. So I have that part of my brain. But really on a daily basis, if you're sort of in the struggle phase, if you're not, we have 6 stages. The first 2 are 0 to 100K GCI and 100 to 500. If you're under 500K GCI or even 250 or less, really just watch where you're spending your time. And on a daily basis, you need to do things that it's only 4 things. It's, prospecting, lead follow-up, new consultations or appointments, and then negotiating deals. So PLAN, prospecting, lead follow-up, appointments, and negotiating deals. And anything out of those 4 things, you're not going to get paid what you want to get paid. So you've got to figure out a way to get everything off your plate. Even a part-time administrator, only 15% of agents have any administrative support. Even a part-time administrator, can double the amount of money you take home, even though you're investing. Like this mindset of like, I can't afford an administrator. It's like, but you just told me you're not making enough money and you're broke and your net worth is net negative, right? So what are you going to do differently? What is your plan for financial, not only financial peace, but financial prosperity? Like what is the actual plan? If it's doing the same thing you've been doing and it's led you to nowhere, let's contemplate something different.
Definition of insanity, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Banging your head against the wall, just keep doing the same thing over and over again. So, and that's all I did. Honestly, I'd never sold anything before. I'd never marketed any before. I'd never built a business before. I just knew that if I could spend time on the things, and a lot of the things I built were things that they're not easy to do. So they take a little bit of time to build the systems, but then once they're built, you can have someone else run it. And your first administrator, they're going to be your marketing coordinator, your listing coordinator, and your closing coordinator. And there are licensed agents that are dying for the opportunity to be an administrator because sales is not their gig. Mm-hmm. And my first hire stuck with me for 8 years, and she started out as those 3 roles.
It's awesome. So so again, a bunch of stuff to unpack. I love it. I want to go a little bit deeper. I want to make a comment on one thing. First of all, when it comes to the tax return, comment that you made about, go look at what your gross or what your net income is. I would first say, and I don't know, Laura, don't have any data on this, but I would question that most realtors, even that number is not real. Like they're digging up phantom receipts and phantom expenses to minimize their taxes. So if you're doing that, it's like this doesn't necessarily apply, and you need to get real with yourself before you even start this, because you need to be you need to be tracking this stuff, which clearly you're the kind of guy that does. And if you're not doing that, gosh, you got to look in the damn mirror, which then leads to the 15-minute increment piece, which is almost like, it made me think of, are you coachable? If you're not willing to do this, which I think is fascinating, I want to ask you a quick question about it, is when it comes to that exercise, like that is so simplistic, but yet so powerful, yet you're so right that nobody's going to take the time to do it, because they're going to find out that the remote control to the TV is in their hand far more than they'd like to admit, right? Or whatever their vice is. And so how would you suggest somebody listening saying, damn, that's powerful, I need to do that? How do I do it? Like, what do you suggest? Am I just carrying around a notebook? Am I setting a timer for every 50? What am I doing? How do I do that?
Yeah, so there are different ways to do it, and we can surely get that. I don't know if you guys have any way to get a PDF in the show notes. So just hit me up afterwards, and I'll basically describe how to do it. So there's different ways to do it. Some people literally just keep setting the timer over and over for 15 minutes. I'm more of a, because I still do it. I'm like, the only way once I hit 1,000, I'm going for 5,000. So it's like my game is never, I'm not going to stop playing this game. So I think you could set a timer. I like to go like an hour to an hour and a half. I use my calendar pretty intentionally, so I have everything in my calendar, like everything I do from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep is in my calendar. So I carry it around with me. I print it out, double-sided, black and white, staple it, and carry it around with me. And even if you miss like a couple hours, just stop in that moment and just write the 8 time blocks, 4 15-minute increments, and then code them every day. So the instructions are on it. I would love to know how many people actually do this, because we can't get our highest paying members to do this. And this, my friends, and I don't know how many people listen to this, this will set you free if you're willing to do it and actually admit that you're so far off track in terms of where you should be, not just to make money, but what you say your priorities are. Like a lot of guys, will say, oh, this is going to sound horrible. And everyone might shut it off when I say this, but I'm going to go for it anyway. Guys will say, like, I do want to be a good husband. I want to be a good father, right? I want to take care of my physical body. I want to, whatever you want. And then you do a time study. We've done time studies where people aren't making the kind of money they want. They have challenges at home and they're playing 3 hours of video games, and they have kids. And they're like, that's my decompressed time. I'm like, no way. Like, there's no way you can watch 8 football games in a week, right? Monday, Thursday, 3 on Saturday, college, and then 3 on Sunday. And then sports Center throughout the week, and claim to want to show up as a good husband and dad. 0% chance. I challenge anyone on that. There's got to be a lot of dysfunction in your life to be able to pull off that calendar. And if you're able to, and let's say your wife is cool with it and your kids somehow get into sports with you and you rationalize that you're being a family guy, your income, I promise you're not making the kind of money you want to make. It's impossible. So when I talk about meaningful goals, right? If you really want to be a good dad and you really want to be a good husband and you want to take care of your physical body, you want to have a spiritual journey, but emotionally well, so you don't like go off the handle one day, and you want to like have an impact in maybe a real estate team or in your community, or you just have to make some tough decisions. I've watched probably 4 hours of news since November 3rd or 4th. And that's more than I watched in 4 years. So I've just cut off all news. I've got really limited access to social media. And it wasn't always like that, but I knew as I got sort of loftier with the impact I wanted to have, that I need to make more sacrifice. And it doesn't feel like sacrifice because I take 12 to 15 weeks vacation and I have more money than I ever would imagine. I don't need to work anymore. And so do you want to end up like having all these regrets later? Or do you want to just be honest with yourself right now? And there's no shame in where you are right now. We go to, and I've done it before. I have binge watched Dexter. I was late to the game on the show Dexter, but there was 96 episodes, 8 seasons of 12 episodes, 55 minutes each. I watched it in 2.5 months. Do the math on that. It's 96 hours essentially of TV that I binged. So I have been there. Like I'm not a sports guy. I was when I lived in New Jersey. I went to every home game for like 8 years of the New York Jets. And I think they still suck as bad. I haven't.
It's easy not to be a sports fan when you're a Jets fan. I'll tell you right now.
Right. So I know some of that sounds harsh, and it could be whatever it is. It could be social media. Like social media, I mean, the studies are pretty clear that you're going to be down on yourself when you're too much in social media. Like looking at a highlight reel and comparing it against everything that sucks in that you feel inside. And so I just think people aren't willing to have honest conversations anymore about, where you're struggling, especially guys. Guys are the worst, where I can't hang in a sports conversation. So I just kind of go to something like, what's not working right now? Where are you struggling right now? Yeah. And I think if more of us did that, I think it'd be a better.
I think it's interesting. And I think some of our listeners are probably thinking right now who know me, they're like, oh man, he just struck a chord with Jeff, because social media is a big part of my business. And I spend a ton of time in social media. I think what's probably most important though to point out is that for me, it's less of a time suck it takes a lot of time, but it's intentional. Like it's intentional that I'm posting so much every single day, engaging so much it's a part of the game. I call it a game. It's a part of my business is what it is. And it's creating enormous opportunities far beyond anything I've ever dreamt of. But I think the intentionality is probably what it's all about. And even when it comes to television or Netflix or anything like that, I don't think Lars is saying you suck, you're a failure if you do any of these things. It's just a matter of being intentional about it, I think, is really what it boils down to. And I love what you said about dads, because it's true. I was that dad once. I watched every football game, and I'm same as you. It's rare that if I watch TV, it's on in the background. Like I don't sit down and watch TV. I just don't have time. And that's not even intentional. I just don't have time anymore. And it's just become less of a priority.
And I think you said it, it's like laser focused and super intentional. And even in what you're doing, we met like 47 minutes ago at this point. So I don't know any of that with you. Right. And so I was willing to at least put it out there. And I would even look at like, are there parts of what you're doing in your social media that you could leverage to somebody?
Oh yeah.
Like if you're at $200 an hour, you want to make 500, wherever you are, what could you, I've gotten to the point where, right or wrong, I shoot, I put out a YouTube video every day, high quality, but I have 2-day shoots every 2 months. So in about 12 hours of shooting in front of a camera, I can get 2 months of content done. Nice. And then I have everyone else does every single other thing, the posting, the creating, so that's like an ultimate leverage point. But some people are like on Facebook all the time, and that works. Just make sure it is leading to something, and you're not burying yourself in the randomness of just scrolling, which is probably not, and just recently my kids got on, I have a 10 and 12-year-old, and they got on TikTok. And so I got on TikTok. Two things are on TikTok. A lot of like half-dressed women. So you're trying to bounce your eyes all the time. And the thing sucks you in.
Oh yeah.
Even if that's not part of it, which it is. So for guys, it's like this, whatever, landmines everywhere. And the other part of it is that I have been on that thing for 60 minutes. Like I'm catching up on the news, like all this funny stuff. And I'm like, what just happened with the last 60 minutes? And these things are designed to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you watched The Social Experiment or The Social Dilemma.
The one on, I know what you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah. It was really convicting. So it's funny how like their goal in life is to get you on that thing as many hours a day as possible.
And what you don't know about me is that I was probably, if not one of the top 3 advocates for TikTok about a year and a half ago, before anybody even realized what it was, because I have teenage daughters and they turned me on to it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the next level of social media. And when you say what you just said, I hear one thing. I don't hear rabbit hole. I don't hear time suck. I hear opportunity. I hear, think about all those eyeballs that are going to be on your brand and create a presence there. But you're right, because here's what I don't do on social media. I never do this. Yeah. In fact, I have to force myself. You need to go onto Facebook. You need to scroll. You need to go give some people some love, because otherwise you're defeating the purpose of everything that you preach. It's like I have to force myself to go to TikTok and watch. And believe me, gosh, my wife and I will lay in bed some nights and just laugh our asses off and have fun together, right? But man, it can suck you in. And they're all IG, YouTube, LinkedIn,
it's
Twitter.
Funny. Instagram to me is the worst. It's like, I don't know that people are just better looking on Instagram, or their kids are better looking, or they're more fit on Instagram. I think it's like so obviously like visual that I go in there and I have a headache. I don't know why, but I physically have a headache. So I can't even go in Instagram anymore. It's like, it's really, really bad.
Well, that's what the platform was designed for. So you just kind of, you really just reinforced it that it is a visual platform.
Yeah.
Lars, we are going down a rabbit hole, and we're coming up on the time here. So I want to give you an opportunity to kind of share some closing remarks or anything that you feel like that maybe we didn't touch on, and by the way, again, we had no intention of what we were going to talk about. And I thought this was fantastic, man. I think as simplistic as the concepts are, they're so advanced and challenging that I would love to get some feedback from some of our audience on this, to hear if anybody does this 15-minute increment thing, or for anybody who dials into their expenses and dials into the data and says, man, what is my hourly rate? And be honest with yourself. What is it? What do you have? Fire away.
Yeah. So I think it's just getting your priorities straight, and, without sort of, introducing any more shameful comments, more like, there's a group I belong to, C12. It's a Christian business owners group that meets here locally, and their tagline, their guiding statements is priorities are what we do. Everything else is just talk. And so, like, when I turned 44 in Hilton Head, South Carolina 3 years ago, where I was listening to a book called Halftime by Bob Buford. And in the book, he talks a lot about regret. Like, guys get to the end of their life and they have regret. There's all these billionaires that said, I did it wrong. Sam Walton and, whatever. Steve Jobs even, I think had a similar story. I just don't want to get to the end and have regret. So it's hard to think about, like, where in my life am I drifting? Let's just be honest about it. Don't, in my marriage, in my relationship with my kids, my physical body, my spiritual journey, my business, my finances, let's just assess ourselves regularly and just take one step at a time to get better. And a lot of times I do this. I'll double down on business activities, rationalizing that, like, the business needs me, because I'm avoiding other stuff. Like, relationship with my wife is hard sometimes. My kids are 10 and 12 and they're hard all the time now. Mm-hmm. My son is 12 and he just got a girlfriend 2 days ago. She's coming over this weekend for a date. Like, how do you deal with that? Right now we have to meet these parents. We don't know their names. We've never met them before. And so there's all these new things that are coming at us in rapid fire. And just knowing that I don't want to have regret in these areas, it forces me to shut it down at 5 o'clock, because I know I can spend that hour with my son playing handball now, or with my daughter fixing her guinea pig cage or whatever. I don't really want to do those things some days. I'd rather just put an extra hour into work, because I know I can crush it here. And so I just think, it's that Jim Rohn quote, there's two types of pain: the pain of discipline and the pain of regret. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's any other way to look at it. It's gonna happen. Either you gotta dig in and make some tough choices and have some discipline, or you're gonna have a regret. You're gonna get a divorce. You're gonna have a heart attack. You're gonna, not have kids that are close to you. You're gonna be far from God. You're gonna be, you're gonna be poor, right? You're gonna be that guy that's 72 years old showing homes as a real estate agent. And so I think for me, when I start in that big stuff that feels heavy, my personality responds to it. Some people don't respond to it. Some people are just like, that guy's an idiot. That made me feel bad about myself. I'm going to keep going. I love TikTok. TikTok is great. It makes me feel good. Well, I don't know what to tell you then.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that, though. I think what you just said, though, what do you want? Which pain do you want? And that's not even to say that not making money or not having success in your career equals regret. It's not for everyone, right? I mean, not everyone has what it takes or even cares. Like, it doesn't matter to them, and that's okay. I think I will decipher what you said and tell everyone that. But I think most people that are taking the time to listen to a real estate podcast want improvement. And so with that, you need to take what Lars said and take a good hard look in the mirror. And try to figure out, like, where can I improve? Because at the end of the day, that is your goal. Maybe your goal is not to make 7 figures or even 6. Your goal is to be comfortable. That's okay. You still need improvement, and figure out where you can improve. Lars, this has been fantastic, man. This is good conversation.
Yeah, I didn't know where it was going to go, but I guess it went where it needed to. So I love that.
I think that's the key. So where can our audience? So let's just say some of our audience say, "Man, I love this guy. I want more of what he's got." Where can I find them? Where can they get a hold of you? What do you suggest?
I think probably the easiest way, just, to get to know my style, what I sort of stand for, just Business Freedom Podcast. Directly kind of connecting with me is probably partnerwithlars.com. So the podcast is probably the most fun thing I've ever done in my career. We're putting out an episode a day now, and I just speak about everything from sucking as a dad and a husband sometimes to, crushing in business, to failing in business. Talk about my journey, what worked, what didn't work. And you can learn more about, what we've got going on at partnerwithlars.com as well.
Awesome. What about the B School?
You can get that through partnerlars.com, but Real Estate B School is our, we have got case studies on there, a bunch of free resources.
Is there a website?
Yeah, realestatebschool.com.
Is it Real Estate B dash school?
No, just Real Estate B School. So B is for business, but realestatebschool.com.
All one word. Awesome.
Yep.
Dude, this has been great. Lars, this has been a fantastic conversation, and one that we didn't know was coming, but I think this is powerful. This is impactful. And I'm even questioning myself. I'm almost challenging myself now, thinking I want to try that 15-minute increment thing just for the hell of it, just to see if I can actually do it.
Are you declaring that you're going to hold yourself accountable to do it?
No, I want to declare to no one. I want to declare to no one.
It almost sounded like you did here in front of the 10 million listeners that you guys have.
We'll see if anybody listens. If anybody was listening this long and you heard that, I want a DM. I want a DM that you heard that and you're calling me out.
Okay.
Then
We'll at least hold you to like a Monday through Friday, a 5-day time study.
I'm down.
If you'll do that, I'll evaluate it with you.
All right. Sounds
awesome.
like we might have a plan here. All right, brother. This has been fantastic. Good to get to know you.
All right. Be good.
LabCoatAgents Podcast.